Today on Privacy X, I'm going to teach you something really important in this tutorial. I'm going to teach you how to get ghost internet. This is vital because this is your gateway to the internet. So this is going to be more of a tutorial video. You see a couple tech projects over here. Well, they're a little bit dusty. Raspberry Pi I built and a router that I customized. We'll get into that in a second. Don't worry about that. I've got some simple solutions for you guys. I'm going to jump right in, buckle up, strap in, Operation Ghost Internet. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is give you guys an overview, and then I'm going to give you solutions for everything I talk about. So you can see this graph here, and it goes over a few different things. The first thing is payment. You've got to have anonymous payment. If you don't have anonymous payment, this whole thing falls apart. Now, what most of my clients do and what I use is ghost cards. Ghost cards work incredibly well, but for some of you, you might not actually have them. So I'm going to give you a couple of alternatives. If you're not a ghost yet, I recommend you check it out. Go to privacyxproject.com. It'll be the first link down below. You can check out the ghost program, and we can solve that problem and help you get a ghost card, ghost business, ghost life, the whole deal. But we're going to break down a little bit more in depth here. So first thing is you have to have anonymous form of payment. Second thing is when you're setting up for your ISP, which is Internet Service Provider, they can't know who you actually are. Now, whether it's an anonymous company or an anonymous alias, I do both, and I'm going to tell you how to do both here in a second. From there, it's going to go into a router. So you're going to have something like this. Okay, you're going to go in for your modem, which is your ISP, into a router. Now, this is a router that has one core purpose, and it's got a VPN built in. So before I ever even go on the internet, there's no gaps. This is completely VPN, and I have an encrypted tunnel through this router. What router it is not super important yet. I'm going to be doing a full tutorial on this router, and there's other ones that you can utilize for the same thing. Look, all these things pop up. How nice. Extra antennas. Anyway, we'll get into that in a second. So you have the router. Then from the router, you hardwire, of course, old school Ethernet. You can actually hardwire in, and then you can utilize the Raspberry Pi as a secondary security device, which I'll talk about in a second. And then you go into your computer. Now, I like to hardwire whenever I can. You can utilize Wi-Fi from this. You can actually port your Wi-Fi directly from here, log into Wi-Fi. Then I've already done a tutorial, so I'm not going to touch too heavily on this part because there's a tutorial on this channel, step-by-step breakdown on how to utilize VirtualBox, Linux, Tor, and the entire distro, the VPN on my computer itself. So you're like, is that two VPNs? Well, in theory, because the actual connection is encrypted, but then also when I go out and utilize Tor, it goes through the different relays and then the exit node to wherever the packets are sent, whatever website I'm going to or whatever it is I'm doing. So you can utilize Tor, or you could just utilize a regular browser, like let's say Brave browser or something like that. And you could do the same thing. It's just a little bit less secure. But for your average browsing, you don't have to be full, super spy mode for everything you do. You can use something basic like the Brave browser as long as you set it up this way. So one of the biggest things on the internet now is VPNs. A lot of people are talking about VPNs and how VPNs help anonymize you. And they do a little bit. They have an encrypted tunnel. But here's the problem. When nobody talks about VPN, because the VPN is just a cool, you get your VPN, you go online, you're anonymous, you disappear. That's not true at all. Unfortunately, they track the traffic, the entry, and the exit. It's kind of like if you're in a car and there's a camera on both sides and you go into a tunnel, right? They see you go in the tunnel, they see you go out, but they can't see what you're doing inside, right? Wrong, because a lot of these VPNs actually keep logs, and even if you think it doesn't keep logs, there's a first time for everything, and we've seen a lot of great VPNs end up logging, which is the problem. So I use a VPN as kind of a redundancy, but I don't rely on VPNs because they can't be relied on. Now, if you're wondering what VPN you should use, I did a full tier list of the best VPNs. You can check it out here on this channel. I actually have a playlist of a lot of different privacy technology tools you can use, and one of them is my VPN tier list. Check that out for the best VPNs because there's different ones for different situations. So this is kind of the structure. So let me start back at the beginning. That's the broad strokes of what we're going to get into. Let me start back at the beginning. Let's say you're going to go get internet. Okay, right now you're going to go get internet. For most of you, you have Comcast, you have some kind of internet service. Maybe you're a nomad, you have traveling internet, maybe you got an office or a house. And whose name is the internet in? Is it in your name? Well, there's a couple reasons you don't want internet in your name. First of all, everything you do, every ISP, and I mean every single one, logs everything you do, everywhere you go, every site, everything you look at. I mean, it's just creepy, the logs they keep. That's all of them. That's 100%. I don't care where you are in the world, Canada, Australia, definitely in Europe. Europe has got some serious internet problems, to be honest with you. Europe is not too far away from communist China. If you're in Europe, you need to become a ghost quick. Europe is unfortunately falling. It's sad to see. Canada, oh my gosh, I have so many clients in Canada because Canada is being tracked at a level that is unprecedented. I barely consider Canada a free country anymore. In the United States, we keep knocking stuff down because our Constitution and because the way we're structured. Justin Trudeau is just out there doing whatever he wants, it seems. So when you look at these things and you look at your ISP, they all track you, all of them. So understand that. So the first thing you need to do is you need to get your ISP anonymous. Now, you might be thinking, are there internet service providers that take crypto? Not really, not really. I mean, the best you could do is use like your Coinbase card or your Crypto.com card or one of these cards and use that. Do I recommend doing that? That's tied to your name as well. You might as well use your Visa at that point. In fact, I think they probably are Visa, right? So that doesn't really help the solution. Do they accept crypto as payments? No, almost none of them do. Do they accept cash as payments? That would even be nice. No, very few of them do. I think there's a few exceptions, but almost none of them are going to accept cash. So what do? Well, you use your card. You use what you've been conditioned to use, and that's your card. What's the problem with using your card? It's connected to your identity, and that identity is what they put in the database, and then with that identity, they put all of this web traffic. And if somebody maliciously injects something, you can actually, I hate to say it, but you can go to jail. It's happened many, many times. Now, is that likely? No. There's a lot of other reasons why you want to hide your web traffic. Malicious intent from your neighbors isn't necessarily, although if you have any enemies, I mean, if somebody was my enemy and I went, I knew where they lived, which, let's be honest, I know where everyone lives, then literally I'd probably have more addresses than Santa Claus at this point because the databases I use. And I talked to you guys how you need to get out of these databases. There are thousands of databases tracking you, and the ISPs is one of many companies that create these databases and sell them. So does credit bureaus, so do all these companies. They create these databases and they sell them. So you need to start with a ghost card. Now, if you have a offshore corporation like we teach in our Ghost program, and then you have a bank account, which is part of a process. It takes a little while to set up the process, but it's part of the process. You have your Ghost card, you use that in that company to set up your internet. Well, then you're a ghost. Then you set up your internet. Then what happens? Well, then through your modem, you connect it to a VPN router. So this is a router that is specifically for one purpose, that's VPN. I recommend hardwiring whenever you can, so you Ethernet hard port back here, hardwire into your, even if you, like I use my MacBook Pro a lot, or I use my Linux laptop a lot, so I have two laptops that I toggle back and forth quite a bit. I hardwire into both of them on a regular basis. Now, if I can't do that, I will use Wi-Fi. I can port Wi-Fi through this. Also, I use the Raspberry Pi, so if you're not familiar with Raspberry Pi, this is actually just a computer. You can build them, you can customize them. I customize them all the time. This will plug directly into your actual computer, and you could use this as a Linux workstation as well. A little more advanced, so I'm not going to go too deep into that here. I'm actually going to be doing a tutorial, so if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, because putting out new content here all the time. But I'm going to show you how I use this as a separate workstation through VirtualBox, so you can actually port your VirtualBox over and use this as a separate workstation. I know I look a little crazy in the coffee shop if I go in there and do a workstation. Looks like I got a battle station, but I'm the one guy who's not getting hacked in that coffee shop, I can promise you. Now, there is some spoofers I use from Hack5. Hack5 is kind of a company that provides some hacking solutions and some pen testing solutions, because we do a lot of pen testing for clients, especially big corporate clients and big international clients, millionaires and billion-dollar companies and stuff. And so we'll use this as a virtual workstation, and also you can port through, like a lot of people will use Tails and things like that. So you go through your router, connect it into your computer. Do I use a VPN on the computer? Yes. And then I go into VirtualBox, which I'm going to tell you, I recommend you watch that tutorial if you don't know how to use VirtualBox, because I go through how to use Linux and then set up the actual launch sequence and then the workstation. So you have basically four if you count the VPN layers of anonymity, and you're encrypted. So for somebody to untangle that level of encryption, they would literally have to be using an NSA supercomputer. You would be one of the most secure people you've ever met doing that. And you can do that with any laptop. Now, I don't recommend Windows, but if you have to use Windows, then you'll be the one time you're secure on Windows, because Windows is full of holes. Linux laptop I recommend. The good thing about Apple laptops, while iPhones are very unsecure, MacBooks and other Apple laptops or Apple computers can be fairly secure. I would say they could probably be a 7.5, maybe even 8 out of 10. A Linux could be a 10 out of 10. A Windows, 3.25 out of 10 at their best, on their best day. But, so that's the problem with Windows. They're so full of holes. But this is another option. Now, porting through into into basically a bootable OS, operating system, is another great solution because it gives you a lot of freedom and anonymity when you're outside. So it starts with being a ghost when you get your internet. Then they can track your patterns. Like if you're logging into your social media, if you're logging into your email, if you're logging into things, they can track your patterns. So you've got a break at your payment. You've got a break at your ISP with your router. You've got a break at your VPN router. You've got a break when you go from your router to your computer. From your computer, you're not using your computer's operating system. You're using VirtualBox, and you can actually even boot it on a Raspberry Pi, a separate OS. And you've got a VPN built in here. You've also got a VPN on your computer because the VPN on the router is for your computer's connection. The VPN, let's say we're using something, some browser like Brave, well then you've got that connection. So it'll take this IP, which is different than my modem's IP, and it'll separate those, and then the VPN on my computer will mask this IP. So you're just masking a series of IPs. So again, you're creating that spider web. Very, very important. Anyway, I appreciate you guys checking this out. I'm going to be doing some breakdowns on each one of these steps individually. So subscribe if you haven't already. But I want to show you the big picture of how you get ghost internet and let you know how important this is. So many of you have internet service in your name. One of the worst things to have in your name. Of all things to never have in your name, you should never have a phone in your name, and you should never have internet in your name. Because those are your gateways to the digital world, to the modern world. And the average person literally has a phone in their name and gives their phone out at coffee shops. Do you know what can happen to you if someone like me who's malicious gets that information? They could unwind your entire life. Do you know what can happen to you if I'm sitting in my car out front of your house and decide to tap into your system? That's it for you. I don't care how rich you think you are. I don't care how many assets you think you own. If they're in your name and I'm able to find them, or someone likes me able to find them, they can unwind your entire life. And it's scary. It happened to me. The reason I got into this is in 2010, I had massive identity fraud, identity theft, and it destroyed my entire life temporarily. Luckily, I was able to fix it. I wasn't uber successful. I didn't have the money I have today. I wasn't super successful back then, but I was successful enough to be screwed like anybody else would be. So keep that in mind when you go through this process. Appreciate you guys checking this out. If you haven't already, make sure you give this a thumbs up. Share the message. Let people know that going ghost is the only way to go if you want to keep your freedom in the future. You see what's happening in the world, guys. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, although some conspiracies are interesting. But it's not conspiracy. You see what's happening in the world. You need to start preparing now while you still have a chance, because it's a-coming, and the trains are moving worldwide. You see what's happening, and the only thing that's slowing it is the elections in the United States. I promise you, once the elections in the United States are over, it is going to 10x the speed this stuff starts coming at you. So you got to become a ghost. If you want to learn how to do that, you can go to privacyxproject.com right now. Check it out. Also, a lot of people have been asking me about privacyx.org. It's coming very soon. The beta testers gave a lot of information. I've just had to go through and fix what they wanted me to fix and go through each question. It's taking a little longer than I wanted, but again, it's going to be a great course and training when it comes out. So I'll let you guys know when that's out. But right now, you can go to privacyxproject.com and become a ghost, because frankly, that's more important. That's way more important than anything I'm going to teach you in that course, because that's what's going to allow you to keep your freedom, keep your identity, keep your assets safe and secure in a country that is, well, no, in a world that has just gone nuts. But now that we're global, you can use that worldwide network to your advantage, regardless of what country you're in. Anyway, appreciate you checking this out. Have an amazing day. I'm going to be breaking each process down in an individual breakdown, but I wanted to give you an overview in this video. I wanted to talk about Ghost and what the components are in having Ghost Internet. It's not rocket science, but you got to have each component. Otherwise, the spider web falls apart and you become vulnerable. And that's how most of you are. Right now, as you're watching my video, you're connected to the internet. You're probably highly vulnerable. It's not about what you use, it's about how you use it. I could use all this thing. I could use Google and YouTube. I could use all these things if I want to, because I'm using them anonymously. It's not about what you use, how you use. Now, I recommend privacy tools over not privacy tools, but how you use it is a lot more important than what you use. Have an amazing day, guys. Go on everything you do. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next video.